Hello and welcome to Study with Sudhir. This is your digital classroom. My name is Sudhir. We are looking at the English language paper for ISC class 11 and 12 students. And we are looking at how to write a good cultural program review. Okay, this is part of the ISC English language, the English 1 paper. Now, when we talk of a cultural program, the format of writing the review is a little similar to how we write a book review and how we write a film review. We have already done both the videos on Study with Sudhir, so please do go and have a look. When we talk of a cultural program, what are we talking about? We are talking about either a music concert, we are talking about a theatre performance, that is as in a play, or we are talking about a dance program. Generally, these three are the usual cultural programs that we are speaking about. Now here I have listed out what should be the format, and I will go through each and every point in detail so that there are no doubts and you know exactly how to ace writing a cultural review. Okay, now cultural review could be written as part of your school magazine. That's how the format of the question would be. You would get much of the details in the question itself, right? So you just need to ensure that you do not leave out any detail that is asked of you in the question paper. Please remember this very careful. You need to be very careful about this. You could be writing about it in the school magazine or in a local newspaper. So be very conscious of who is your reader. Okay, that's again something, because how you write in a school magazine will be a little different from how you write in a newspaper, because in a school magazine you could be asked about a dance program, okay, or a play which was put up during the annual day function. So your audience will be the school students itself, and there would be a chief guest, which is why here I have written chief guest optional. Okay, and I'll come to that precise point in a moment. But when you're writing in a newspaper, the style of presentation has to be a little more evolved. Okay, there you're talking about a general reader, you know, in different parts of the city or the state, your review would be read. Okay, so there is a slight difference which you need to be conscious of, which is why I said read what is the where it is to be published, how it is to be published, that you need to be aware of in the question paper. Now when we come to the format, first is the title, and when I say the title, it means the headline of the cultural program. Now if you write something very bland and boring and dull, who is going to read the rest of the cultural review that you have written? So your title has to be catchy, and generally the kind of adjectives that we use when we are talking about a concert, a theatre performance or a dance program is things like a mesmerizing performance, right? Or an enchanting show put up by XYZ drama company, right? An evening to remember. So write something which is a little exalted, which kind of will prompt the reader to say that, okay, this is worth my time. Let me find out how was this particular dance performance and whether it is good enough for me to see it the next time the dance performance is staged again, right? Which is why here I have written be positive. I don't think at your ISC examination level you're really expected to be very critical of a performance. It would be much better if you are actually more generous with your compliments. Okay, being positive would actually help. The second is your byline, which is your name. Now you could write your name, you could write an imaginary name, that's absolutely entirely up to you. Byline, you could put it right on top, that is, so I mean the title, a mesmerizing performance by Padma Shri XYZ, and by your name, right? The venue is very important, and for that you would do better to actually remember some of the venues where these kind of performances are staged, right? If it is not a school program, if it is a theatre performance, you know, Nasiruddin Shah performs at the, you know, wherever, you know, one of the more prominent kind of Prithvi Theatre in Mumbai, right? So you would need to know Prithvi Theatre Mumbai. Okay, that is what you need to write. The date is again very important, and remember, when your examination is being held, you write it, mention a date which is just within a week before your examination. If your examination, just to take an example, is taking place say on the 10th of March, then you should ideally mention something like a 4th of March, right? 2021. Performers, who are the performers? If it is a dance program or a theater or a concert, who is the one who is performing? Is it Arijit Singh, right? Is it Karthik? Is it KJ Yesudas in terms of songs, or who is dancing, okay, or who is performing on stage? Whether it is Nasiruddin Shah is performing, or suddenly out of the blue Vicky Kaushal decides to do a play, right? So you need to mention the performers, very important. The chief guest is optional. A chief guest would be necessary in a school program kind of a thing, and I've mentioned that at the end, but here it is generally optional, because a theatre performance, normally you don't have much of a role of a chief guest. I leave that to you. The second paragraph, you need to come to the description. Now, what all constitutes the description? The theme of the play, if it is a play that we are talking about, whether it is a musical drama, when you talk about kind of production, that it is a musical drama, or whether it's a historical, whether it is a slice of life kind of drama, or whether it is a suspense drama being staged out. So the theme of the play is what you need to mention. Then we need, if it is a musical performance, then we need to talk about what is the kind of music, whether it was a classical, Hindustani classical music, okay, whether that's being staged, or whether it is a Carnatic, like you have it during the Margari season in Chennai in particular, a lot of musical performances, the Carnatic music kind. So that is something which you need to know. If it is a dance, whether it is Kuchipudi or Kathak or Bharatnatyam or Kathakali, you need to mention that what is the dance form, okay. So those details, and please do not make a mistake with the spellings, okay. Carnatic spelling, you need to know. Whether it is Kuchipudi, you need to know the spelling. So do not mention anything and make a spelling mistake, because that's what is elementary, okay. Then if it is a play, you need to mention what kind of a story it is. And when I say story, you're not expected to give out all the details. You're just expected in about 2 sentences to mention what kind of a suspense thriller it was, what kind of a romantic story it was, where was it set, whether it was set in 2020. For example, this play that we are talking about, this play that was staged, was the story of 2 persons who were confined to home during the COVID pandemic, and how they coped with the crisis of having to do things themselves and dealing with their own issues, and how they managed to solve their own differences through the 2-month of pandemic lockdown. That is the theme of the play. That's a story of the play, right? That's a story of the play that you can mention just in these 2 sentences. The kind of production is again important. It could be a musical drama, as I mentioned, it could be historical, it could be this kind of a slice of life drama, so it could be a political drama, right? So you need to mention, even in the case of a dance, you can mention what kind of a production it was. And when I say kind of a production, that so and so was the one who was singing for the dance performance. These were the accompaniments, who was playing the pakhavach, who was playing the mridangam or the tabla, who was playing different other musical instruments like the violin. So you can mention all that, which will kind of include what kind of a production it was, okay. And especially if there are big names, you need to mention that. Then we come to the technical aspects of the performance. Lighting, and this is specifically important for dance and for theater, right? Because what kind of lighting, whether it was a lighting which kind of made you feel good, which made you involved with what was happening on stage. Sometimes what happens is that if you have seen theater, I grew up in Delhi and my best friend was in the National School of Drama. So because of his influence, I watched a lot of theater during those years in the 90s, and it was extremely exciting, and it was a learning experience, seeing the likes of the late Om Puri or Nasiruddin Shah, Ashutosh Rana. My best friend was Ashutosh Rana's batchmate. So you saw a whole lot of those kind of actors, Amrish Puri, performing on stage, so it was a great experience. So sometimes what would happen is, when I mention things like lighting and sound quality, is that they would involve the audience also. They would involve the audience, as in one of the actors, for instance, would be sitting in the audience, and sometimes in the middle of the play he would get up and go there onto the stage. So there is a sense of, the entire stage, the audience also becoming a part of the stage. You understand? So you could include those kind of things if you know the more authentic aspects. Don't do fakeobazi, okay? But I'm just giving you ideas. I'm throwing ideas at you as to what all aspects you can include in order to make your cultural program review that much more engaging to read. Okay, so the lighting is very important, that how the lighting, whether it was spooky, whether if it was a horror kind of a drama, whether it made you feel scared, or whether it was a very warm kind of tones. Similarly, in case of dance, where there are many dancers, right, as to how the lighting was done in order to kind of complement the dance form itself. So what I'm doing now is to basically throw different ideas and different terms at you, and please note them down so that you can use all these kind of terms in your cultural program review, because that would kind of lift the quality of the review. Lighting, the sound quality, the props on stage, very important, especially in the case of a drama. What are the props? You understand props as in, for instance, if it's a play which is set in, say, the 1980s, so they would use the old style telephone, right? If it is something which is set in World War II times, the kind of uniform the actors would wear in order to convey a different era, if it's a historical kind of a drama. So whether the props that were there on stage, whether they felt authentic enough or whether they looked out of place, right? You can talk about the props on stage. And why I'm mentioning each one of these details is, one, of course, I know about theater, but the other aspect is that the more you get into these kind of detailing, the evaluator will feel, this student knows his subject. He's not doing fakeobazi, he's knowing what he's talking about. So which is why props on stage becomes an important aspect, as is lighting and the sound quality. Sound quality also very important when it comes to the music. It should not be like, the audio system in between is doing coo, coo, those kind of sounds which generally happen through the microphone. The direction, again, with respect to theater, how was the whole thing directed, whether there were some interesting elements which were introduced in order to make, whether there was a flashback introduced on stage. It's okay to do it on film, but on theater, on stage, whether some kind of a flashback was introduced. If you have all read Shakespeare, now in Shakespeare, what is the general tool that Shakespeare used to use? Asides, where he's talking to the audience, but the rest of the actors on stage cannot hear him, right? It is like he's telling something to the audience, apni man ki baat bata rahe hain. Okay, I'm not talking of anyone else's man ki baat. Okay, so the actor is telling his man ki baat, the audience knows, but the others on stage do not know. So different kind of direction tools that are employed. So that is again something very important. In the case of a musical performance, you could talk about, of course that will come a bit in the quality of performance. You could talk about whether the jugalbandi between the tabla, mridangam and the violinist worked well, between the vocalist and the violinist, whether it worked well, right? Even in that case of a dance performance, whether the vocalist, the person who is singing, and the person who is dancing, whether it worked well. Okay, so all those things become very important. There was this performer, Bharatanatyam performer in our colony in Delhi, and she used to play with a musical tape. I mean, the song would be recorded on tape, so it would play. And she used to be so quick and so much not in sync with the music that many times it has happened that she finished off her dance while the song was still going on. Obviously those kind of things should not happen. Now let's come to the quality of the performance, and here you can talk about the acting of the actors in the case of a theater. You can talk about the quality of the singing, you can talk about the quality of dance, and here it's very important to pay attention to your expression, to your vocabulary. You cannot keep on saying it was a good performance, the actors were good, the dancers were good, the lighting was also good, the sound quality also was very good. If you just keep writing good, 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 or just keep saying it was nice, that was also nice, the examiner will know this fellow knows only one or two words. So your vocabulary is important, your expression is important, and that's why I said please use some of the terms that I've used, the technical terms. It will show that you know well enough about the subject. So you need to talk about the quality of the performance. That's very important. An entire paragraph needs to be devoted to this, in which you give details. Reaction of the audience is also important, because sometimes you get some interesting reactions generally. Okay, so if you know about it and you make a note of it, like the audience also kind of reacted very enthusiastically to the performance, to the jugalbandi between the two, like Rajan and Sajan Mishra singing, and the jugalbandi was so good, or between the late Bhimsen Joshi and the late Balamurali Krishna when they performed. I mean, don't mention them now, but I'm just giving examples when they used to sing together, one singing Hindustani classical, one singing Carnatic music, and the kind of crescendo they took the audience to, and the audience also would get transported to an entire different world. Or the way T.M. Krishna sings, or Sanjay Subramaniam sings, or Sudha Raghunathan sings, they transport you into a different world, in the world of Carnatic music. So you need to be aware of some such names, and or if you are talking about, say, performance by Arijit Singh or by Karthik, that the entire romantic melodies that they sung, or when Arijit Singh sung old Mohammad Rafi songs, or Sonu Nigam sang old Mohammad Rafi songs, they took you to a different era in the 1970s and the 1980s. So that's what you need to talk about, and you say how the audience reacted. The audience also joined in, and here you can talk about the chief guest also. Suppose there is a chief guest, a high-profile chief guest, the Vice President of India. He comes and he says something which kind of adds an element of humor, and he says, I was used to be a singer, and he also sings a couple of lines, and he sings along with Sonu Nigam. You could actually introduce those kind of lines, right? Which would make your cultural program review that much more interesting. It would make the reader interested, wanting to read more of your cultural review, right? Cultural program review. So be aware that you can actually introduce a lot of these elements. It's not strictly like a newspaper report. You're talking of facts, but presenting those facts in an engaging manner, right? In a manner that will make the reader feel interested and say that, wow, that was a good review written by so and so. Finally, in conclusion, you need to write your opinion, whether it was an evening well spent, whether it was an evening which was worth visiting, but worth seeing and spending with those actors or those music performers or the dance performers. So it was an evening well spent. Your opinion as to why you would suggest watching this particular dance performance the next time it is performed in your city, or the next time these actors bring the same play on stage to you, or it could be possible that it would be staged again the next weekend, and why you would recommend anyone who is reading your cultural program review to buy a ticket and go and watch that particular play. So that's as far as how you write a cultural program review. I hope I have made it very clear, and as I said, be positive, and these are two aspects you need to pay specific attention to. Do not repeat your words, especially your adjectives, and your expression carries marks. How you express yourself in the cultural program review will go a long way in ensuring that you get high marks instead of, average mediocre marks. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you.